A new year means a new season of anime, and this season the most anticipated series, according to my anime list at least, is Hori-san to Miyamura-kun, or simply Horimiya. It has good parts, it has bad parts. Let's break it apart. Roll intro. Now, despite championing myself as a fan of mostly niche and serious shows, I do enjoy watching the good old romance. I'm all for wholesomeness and coming of age and all that jazz. It's just that sometimes, my idea of wholesome doesn't match with what's out there. I admit that despite consuming an absurd amount of romance shows, I am critical of most of them.
Bullshit. Derivative. That I absolutely love.
But given that I'm recording this on my 7-year anniversary with my high school sweetheart, I would say that essentially grants me a PhD in high school romance critiquing. I'm something of a scientist myself. In my very biased opinion, which is why you're here anyway, there are a few key points to making a successful romance story. For one, the characters have something in common. They don't need to be literal clones of one another, but there's got to be some reason why they'd even want to speak to one another. 2. There is open communication between the couple. Does that mean they need to tell each other every single problem that goes through their minds? No, but if there is a legitimate issue that needs to be addressed, we don't need to take an entire arc to get to that point. Anyway. 3. The two partners inspire each other to do better. Everyone's a mess, even those who think they got it made. But having someone to love in your life means that you want to change into the ideal version of yourself. With some exceptions, of course.
Pranked, baby.
4. There is mutual respect. Yeah, don't treat your partner like a dog. Or a doormat. And finally, 5. The side characters are well developed and other potential love interests are equally decent people. It can be a big cast or a small one, but I shouldn't feel like I'm wasting my time whenever someone who's not the protagonist comes on screen. Taking a look at this list, I can confidently say that Horimiya follows each of them for the most part. Horimiya became one of my most anticipated shows of the season for 2 reasons. First, I read the manga already, and because I consider it to be one of my favorite series, it was a no-brainer to watch the anime. And second, it was being made by Cloverworks, who've made 2 shows I also enjoyed. There was last year's Millionaire Detective, which to me was so much fun. I listen to that OP on repeat, even to this day. And before that was Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. I went from, oh this sounds trashy, to what the hell, why didn't I watch this sooner? I loved the characters, the story, the fact I didn't have to wait 13 episodes for a love confession. It easily became one of my favorites from that season. Now, this video won't be a review in the traditional sense, because a lot of what I like about this story is much more deeply explored in the manga rather than the anime, and I can't discuss the manga without spoiling anime-only watchers. So, instead, this will be more like a list on how Horimiya handles my 5 demands, key points, and why it does them right. 1. The characters have something in common. For those of you who don't know much about this show, allow me to break it down for you. The premise is simple. 2 high school students, Hori Kyoko and Miyamura Izumi, are in the same class but barely speak to each other. They become friends when Miyamura helps out Hori's little brother, Sota. From there, the 2 learn that the other has a completely different persona outside of school. Although Hori and Miyamura seem to be complete opposites, they both have sides to themselves that they don't reveal to others. Knowing each other's private persona is a core tenet of a relationship, and in Horimiya's case, the 2 act like they're in a relationship before they even verbally acknowledge it. They just naturally drift closer to each other. I also appreciate the proper subverting of expectations here. Miyamura is not the otaku that others have pegged him to be. In fact, he's pretty average level intelligence, which is clear in his lackluster grades and the fact he doesn't always think things through. Like those tattoos, man. Goodbye school trip onsense, goodbye public pools. Nothing against tattoos, but in the context of him living in Japan, they're definitely going to limit some of his experiences. Hori, while giving off the appearance of being the popular girl with great grades, is really a housewife in training and can be pretty aggressive to others. Nothing abusive, fortunately. Well, sometimes.
Did you drink my Mountain Dew?
Now, I'll admit that I have mixed feelings on the secrets these 2 have. Hori's are a bit underwhelming, to say the least. Really, being a good sister and helping around the house is supposed to be scandalous? I'm pretty sure her friends wouldn't be gossiping about her if they found out. But in Miyamura's case, it's a bit more understandable. It's not so much the tattoos or piercings that he's afraid of people knowing. Sure, he's hiding them from the school, but not necessarily from individual people. I think that he's much more worried about hiding his past trauma from others than he is about coming across as some edgelord. 2. There is open communication. For the most part. It does seem to me like Miyamura is more of an honest communicator than Hori to an extent, but she does try her best when an issue does arrive. When she tries to figure out his first name, for example, she avoids asking him directly. Understandable, but when all of her alternate methods fail, she tells him what's been bothering her up front, despite knowing that he might laugh at her for it. And he does. But hey, it's realistic for a change. And is not drawn out over an entire episode either. She also has very candid discussions with her family about Miyamura, which are treated much more naturally than in other series. We don't have any overprotective parents or siblings who think Miyamura is a bad boy coming in to take their little girl's. There's no contrived conflict pitting the family against him.
Come near my daughter! Consequences will never be the same!
And no scenario of them saying, "Oh, it's a boy! A boy!
Oh shit!
Quick, marry him before you turn 20 so he can pump out a few units." Wink. If anything, you could argue that Miyamura gets along with the Horis a bit too well. But he is a sweetheart, so it's not entirely implausible.
Miyamura-kun, まつげ長いって言われない?
はい、お通し。
3. The two partners inspire each other to be better. Our two protagonists both have a couple of obvious flaws to make them appear more human to us and not some kind of animated character. Wait a second. Hori isn't very honest with her feelings and often has violent outbursts instead of handling her conflicts calmly. Miyamura has very low self-esteem and trust issues and is equally bad at initiating conversations with others. Thus, he appears to be perpetually gloomy and unapproachable. He's also sometimes a bit too honest with what he's thinking, giving people the wrong impression more often than not. But as their relationship develops, they both try to overcome their own flaws. Hori forces herself to admit her feelings towards Miyamura to drive off a girl who may or may not have had actual interest in him, and later on in the manga she works on recognizing when her violent outbursts are in fact uncalled for. She learns to apologize to Miyamura when she's the one in the wrong, so he doesn't become the worrisome cucumber that my partner is. On the other hand, Miyamura slowly degloomifies himself and begins to interact with more and more people. He starts getting used to people being interested in him and leaves behind his assumption that he's just plain unlikable. His worries are also believable and not something that can be solved with the snap of a finger. They don't exist because of some convoluted misunderstanding, but from years of emotional neglect and disdain from so many other kids. It's easy to see how all of that would erode any semblance of confidence and make it difficult to think that people actually like him. After all, this is only the second time in his life that he has any friends, and Shindo, who he met in junior high, isn't around to help him through it either. Those piercings and tattoos aren't just him being edgy, but rather an attempt to be something other than the stereotype others believe him to be. 4. There is mutual I can't tell you how many anime I've watched where one partner who supposedly loves the other unapologetically treated them like trash. From the more overt examples such as Wolf Girl to the more covert ones such as hiding stuff from a partner or wasting their time such as Tonikawa and Nisekoi. Or beating the shit out of them and causing others to beat the shit out of them like your lie in April.
What the fuck is your problem?
That last one's gonna piss some people off. I do like that show though, but my point still stands. I see no reason why I should root for a couple that's borderline abusive. So many romance shows also consider a long chase to be exciting, but I can never shake off the feeling that if someone stringed me along like that in real life, I'd lose all my attraction for them. So, how does Horimiya handle this? In the first episode alone, there's been more done to further their relationship than most other series. Both Hori and Miyamura are naturally afraid of rejection, but not so much so that they'll bottle up their feelings indefinitely until the
Fairy fucking godmother
makes the first step for them, or they can see the end credits roll on screen.
I'll fucking stand it!
They really confess to each other in the third episode, albeit while giving each other an escape route in case things go south. You know, similar to how in real life boys will say things like,
"I'd smash you." I'm kidding, by the way. Unless you want to.
Would you smash me? Are you kidding, by the way?
No. I'm dead fucking serious.
Bam! She's wet.
Come here, honey. And by episode 5, they're officially together.
そうよ。なんか文句あんの?
But beyond the fact that they both have enough respect for each other to be upfront about most things, they also get angry at each other's expense. Miyamura headbutts Sengoku
Kick fucking ass!
for essentially exploiting Hori without a word of thanks and for blaming her for someone else's fuck-up. And Hori similarly gets upset when Miyamura is bullied or ignored by others. 5. The side characters are equally developed and interesting. Holy dog shit! The side characters are not lifeless cardboard cutouts. Groundbreaking! Toru has a crush on Hori, but he's a decent human being who understands that
No means no.
but also a human who can't just forget her and move on immediately. He supports Miyamura, but somewhat hates him at the same time for getting with his best girl. He's not one to try and beat him up for daring to like Hori though. We already know how a fight between the two would turn out anyway. And Yuki. She's the cutest girl, and the way she stretches out her blazer sleeves just gives me warm and fuzzy feelings. She's a sweetheart, and I can't wait to see more of her in the anime too, because she doesn't have a whole lot of screen time just yet. Unfortunately, because I'm talking about this show pretty early in its run, I just couldn't not talk about it, okay? I'm impatient. We haven't gotten a whole lot of opportunities to see what the other characters are really like. Nevertheless, here are my thoughts on 4 of them. Seibu seems a bit like an uptight snob, but that's probably to be expected given that he's the student council president. And, well, he's a walking stereotype. Remy is ditzy and bubbly. She might not be a malicious bitch, but definitely has the intelligence of a sack of hammers.
Now you fucked up! You have fucked up now!
She forced Hori to admit that she likes Miyamura, so she gets a point for that. Sakura clearly has an inferiority complex against Remy and a hopeless crush on Toru. She seems like a sweet girl who just hasn't come to terms yet with the fact that she can be both different and attractive at the same time. And Hori Kyosuke, my favorite deadbeat dad. Okay, he's not a deadbeat dad, but he sure looks like it. His personality is hilarious, and his interactions with his daughter are highly amusing. I love him. He definitely looks like an overgrown Sota, and I hate that the anime chose to cut off Miyamura's line in the manga where he mistakes him for a grown-up Sota. Also, have I mentioned that I love him? Because I love him. Like, really love him.
So what do you say, baby?
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the bad and the awkward of this show. I know I love this series, but it's because I love it that I also have a bunch of complaints. I put it at the end so that hopefully I won't be spammed with dislikes immediately. First of all, what the fuckity fuck is up with the pacing of this story? Somehow we're up to chapter 25 of the manga in 5 episodes, which sounds like a good pace, yet it feels like hardly anything happens in any given episode. Whenever the end credits start rolling, I think to myself, that's it?
The fuck was that?
I don't understand how the show manages to cut out so many details yet retain such a slow pace at the same time. Some characters have had their roles trimmed down and others have yet to even show up. Overall, Shindo's relationship with Miyamura has been cut down the most, which is a shame. We got to see a very different side of Miyamura as he interacted with Shindo, which made him a more complex character in my opinion. As the episodes go on, I'm sure this will come back to bite them in the ass because key events won't have the weight they're supposed to have with so much missing background information. It's sad, and it could have been avoidable. This show was very likely to be a success from the beginning, which would have given the studio a chance to make a second season and, actually follow the massively popular manga. This, kids, is what happens when an inexperienced cook thinks they can tinker with an already established recipe. They figure out down the line that maybe the recipe was the way it was for a reason. But by then, the food is already spoiled and you can't turn back time. Excuse my analogy, I work as a cook. A reason for this terrible oversight from a studio with a reputation of Cloverworks is probably the fact that they're working on 3 series at the same time in 2021, the second year of the apocalypse. They also have a 4th show set to air in April. They're stretched pretty thin, but supposedly the director in charge also worked on Bleach. Maybe that's why Horimiya also has some of the same filler energy. Second, the OP is awfully underwhelming. It's not terrible, but I was hoping for something with a little bit more oomph, if you know what I mean. Kinda like Tonari no Kaibutsu-kun, which is one of my favorite rom-com OPs. Horimiya has a very different tone, and I get it, but that's not an excuse to be that dull. Same thing with the ending and its oddball graphics. This would have been an amazing opportunity to have a contrasting, energetic song. Instead, we get the same limp noodle energy as the OP. Sad. Skippable. Lastly, I really wish we could see more of who Hori is. To me, she's the weak link in this story because there's not so much that sets her apart from the standard edgy heroine. My partner also mentioned one day that Hori being violent towards Miyamura is actually a common trope in romance anime.
ほら、小さい子って好きな子をいじめたりするでしょ？あれと同じだよ。
I haven't felt love like that since the Third Reich.
And my reaction to that was quite literally this meme. I have seen multiple shows in which girls acting tsundere and getting violent with their male classmates and love interests is considered cute and edgy, and I was hoping this would be a bit different. The manga makes Hori's violent overreactions a lot more of a character flaw than the anime does, which I like. But at the same time, the anime seems to take out some of Hori's violence, which makes her more of a flat character. Leave the violence, show her progress. Say no to cookie-cutter sweet heroines. Fortunately, by episode 5, my problems with Hori have somewhat subsided. When Miyamura is seen by Sota with another girl, Hori hits him with her books not because he was with her, but because he used her first name several times. All because he didn't know her last name. And this misunderstanding isn't meant to be comedic either.
こんなに簡単に嫌われるなんて思わなかった。
Hori knows that what she did was wrong and apologizes to Miyamura once it's been cleared up. She doesn't completely take the blame for overreacting, but I've become hopeful that they'll explore this aspect of her soon. Now, I don't want to give you all the impression that Cloverworks has somehow failed with this show. That's not the case at all, because what they may lack in adapting the material, they've succeeded in a lot of other ways. The animation, for example, is absolutely gorgeous and one of the best parts of the show. They undoubtedly spent a lot of time making it look as great as it can, and it shows. Now, only watch this if you read the manga already. Skip to this part if you haven't. I also appreciate that not only are Hori and Miyamura mature teenagers, but they're also shown to have an actual sex drive. For the most part in romantic comedies, sex is treated as something way over the top or completely inexistent.
Christian Channel, of course!
Horimiya strikes that happy medium. They're teenagers, they're cautious of each other. No, they don't blush like idiots when holding hands or being physically close, but they do like it and they do want to get closer. I doubt we'll get to the point where their more intimate moments get animated, but that's something to look forward to in a potential second season. Or it might even come later this season. Only time will tell. In conclusion, this is a story worth watching and especially worth reading. Overall, I think the manga is superior to the anime, as always, but the anime will still give you warm fuzzy feelings. And if any of you know a show that'll give me some more of those warm fuzzy feelings, please let me know in the comments below. Thanks, and see you all next time!